Welcome to this deep dive, and we're going to be looking at Second Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 22.
Okay.
And, this is a really uh, intense letter from Paul, to
Yeah.
Timothy.
It
It's
is.
almost like we're reading, someone's last will and testament in a way,
Yeah.
And the thing is it's not just for Timothy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Paul, he's writing this from prison in Rome.
Right.
And he knows his time is limited,
Exactly.
and so it's got this kind of urgency to it, almost a desperation to it.
Yeah, there's a real weightiness to his words.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes out in just how much he says,
Right.
preach the word, do this, and we'll get into the specifics of that, but like why this laser focus on preaching?
Well, I think you have to think about the context of the early church at this time. They're facing increasing opposition.
Right.
And there's always that pressure to kind of soften the message,
Right, to make it
to make it more palatable to the Roman world.
Right.
And Paul, he kind of foresaw this trend, this watering down of the gospel message.
To make it more like the feel-good teachings of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's not just saying preach; he's saying preach the word.
Right, and not just preach it, but reprove, rebuke, exhort.
Yes.
Like strong words.
Strong words.
So, I mean, can you imagine like trying to do that today,
Right. It's
In our very, politically correct world, and everybody's in their own little echo chambers and filter bubbles and stuff like that.
right.
Like it's already hard enough to like,
Get the truth out there.
to say anything that anybody disagrees with without, having a meltdown.
Right.
But he's saying, no, you've got to preach this hard stuff.
Yeah. And Paul understood that truth isn't always comfortable.
Right.
And that sometimes speaking truth will come at a cost.
Yeah.
So Timothy had to be prepared for that.
Yeah. He had to be bold, and it definitely resonates,
Mm-hmm.
like for all of us, like how many times have we kind of had to stand up for something we believe in, even when it was unpopular?
Absolutely.
Like,
It's a
wow.
challenge we all face at some point.
Yeah. And so, I think this letter, from Paul really kind of gets to the core of that.
It does.
And so, along with this urgency of like, preach the word, preach the word, there's this other tone in this letter that I find really kind of poignant, which is this acceptance of death.
Right.
He talks about like, being, a sacrifice being poured out.
Yeah.
But there's this, we talked about the weightiness, but like, how would you describe that, Tom?
Yeah. I mean, it's heavy imagery for sure, but I don't sense despair.
Right.
I don't sense bitterness.
Right.
He views his death through this lens of faith,
Right.
and he describes himself as, having fought the good fight, finished the race, kept the faith.
Right. It's more like he's looking back at a life well lived.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With purpose.
Yeah. It's a triumphant reflection
Yeah. Yeah.
on a life that was meaningful,
Yeah.
a race well run.
Yeah. Like if I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this kind of, leads us to another thing that I think comes out in this letter is this concept of legacy.
Right.
It's not just about his own, fate,
Yeah.
but he's concerned about what he leaves behind.
Yeah. What he leaves behind for Timothy, for the church.
Right. And like to ensure that the work that he started continues and that, the truth that he championed is preserved.
Right.
And it's not just for himself, right?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Because he talks about a crown of righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
That is for all who eagerly await Christ's return.
Yes.
So what do you think he's trying to say there? Like what kind of legacy is he striving for?
It's a legacy of faithfulness.
Okay.
A shared victory.
Right.
Paul's life and ministry were meant to inspire others to run their own races
Right.
with integrity and hope. And knowing that the reward is not just for him,
Right.
but for everyone who holds firm to their beliefs.
Right. And now this is where I think it gets really interesting because, along with all this kind of, high-minded stuff about, preaching the word and, leaving a legacy,
Right.
he starts talking about his companions,
Yes.
and we have Demas who abandoned him
Right.
for the love of this present world.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Luke who remained faithfully by his side.
Oh.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's a moment of, I think, real honesty,
Yeah.
that humanizes Paul.
Right.
Even this giant of faith
Right.
experience disappointment,
Right.
loneliness.
Yeah, we tend to put these biblical figures on a pedestal.
We do.
Like they're
And forget that they,
superhuman.
yeah, they're just like us.
And they went through very human things.
They did.
And so
I mean, does that resonate with you at all?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we all face moments of disillusionment.
Yeah. Times when people let us down.
Yeah.
And I think, knowing that even Paul
Yeah.
experienced this, it makes his story even more powerful.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that faith isn't about being superhuman.
Right.
It's not about being immune to hardship.
It's about finding that strength and resilience even when things are tough.
Right.
Even when people fail us.
Yeah, and this is where I think it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because he talks about Mark.
Right.
And you might remember Mark
Mm-hmm.
is the guy who left Paul
Early on
a previous journey
the previous journey.
and caused some tension.
Yeah. There were some issues there.
And now he's saying, bring Mark with you.
Yeah.
He's useful to me.
Right.
Like what?
James.
That is what an example of forgiveness.
It is.
Second chances.
Absolutely.
That really, I don't know about you, but that really kind of hits me.
Yeah.
Because how often do we write people off?
Right. We hold on to those past hurts and we don't give people the space to grow.
Right.
And to change.
So that's a good question for all of us listening.
Yeah.
Are we, like Paul, are we offering that grace?
Right.
Are we allowing that room for growth? Recognizing that people have that potential to change, to become valuable contributors.
Yeah. And, I think that's a powerful takeaway from this passage.
Yeah.
Is that, Paul challenges us to be more forgiving.
Right.
To see beyond those past mistakes.
Right.
And recognize that inherent value in every individual.
Okay, now before we move on, there's one more thing I want to kind of point out here that I think is really interesting. And it's this warning about Alexander the coppersmith.
Okay.
This guy, really did him wrong.
He did.
And he's like, watch out for that guy.
Right.
Why do you think he even brings that up?
I think it's a reminder that opposition can come from unexpected places.
Right.
Even within the community.
Right.
And, this reinforces that idea of spiritual warfare that we talked about.
Right.
That there are forces at work that are actively seeking to hinder the spread of the gospel.
So it's not just from outside.
No.
There might be stuff going on inside.
Right. Within the church, within the community.
Yeah. So he's basically saying be discerning.
Yes.
Be aware.
Be vigilant.
Be on guard.
Yeah.
And stand firm in your faith.
Right.
Regardless of where the opposition comes from.
Right.
Which is kind of a sobering thought.
It is.
But it leads us to one of the most, I think, powerful verses in this whole letter.
Okay.
And he says, notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me and strengthened me.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a statement.
Here he is, he's abandoned, he's, facing possible execution.
Right.
And yet he finds this solace and strength.
Right. In God's presence.
In God's presence.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
It is.
And I think that's a message that resonates with all of us.
Yeah.
Because we all face trials.
We do.
We all face moments when we feel alone.
Right.
When we feel overwhelmed.
And Paul's experience reminds us that even in those moments, we are not alone.
Right.
God is with us, offering that strength and comfort.
And so, before we dive into the next section of this letter,
Okay.
I want to pause for a moment and just kind of consider what this means, for you.
Mhm.
Have you ever felt like the truth you were trying to convey was unpopular?
Yeah.
That standing up for your beliefs might lead to opposition,
Of course.
rejection.
Yeah. It's a situation many of us have faced.
Yeah. And so, Paul's experience offers us some valuable insight.
It does.
How can we, Timothy, find the courage to speak truth,
Right.
even when it's difficult,
Yeah.
even when it costs us something,
Yeah.
and what does it mean to preach the word in our own lives,
In our own context.
in our own unique context?
Yes.
That's something I hope you'll consider as we continue to explore this letter from Paul to Timothy.
It's a great question to think about. We just explored this powerful declaration of faith, in the face of abandonment.
Right.
But now we come to the section where we see this really human side of ministry, the everyday joys and struggles.
Yeah, it's like we're getting this glimpse behind the curtain,
Right.
and seeing the very real needs and desires of these individuals.
Mm.
And he starts out, giving Timothy a series of instructions. Some are
Mhm.
practical, some are deeply personal.
Yeah, and he starts by urging Timothy to come shortly unto me.
Right.
Remember Paul's imprisoned, he's anticipating his death.
Right.
This simple request, speaks volumes about his need for connection.
Yeah, it makes you realize, like, even these towering figures of faith,
Yeah,
the ones that we often revere, yeah, they were still human.
they were.
They longed for companionship,
Right.
encouragement,
Oh, absolutely.
just like we do.
And it underscores the fact that, we're not meant to navigate life in isolation,
Right.
especially the challenges of ministry.
Right.
We thrive in community.
Right.
We need to lean on each other for support and guidance.
And then in stark contrast to this plea for connection, we have the mention of Demas,
Right.
who deserted Paul.
Yeah. Having loved this present world.
Oof, that's a gut punch.
It is.
It's like, here's this guy who, presumably was committed to the mission.
Yeah. Walked alongside Paul.
Right.
And yet chose to walk away.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what went through his mind.
It's
Like, what could have led him to abandon, his commitment?
Yeah. Was it fear? Was it doubt?
Right.
The allure of a less demanding path?
Right. Right. And while we can only speculate,
Right.
it raises an important question for us. Like,
It does.
what are the things in our own lives that might tempt us
Yeah.
to compromise our convictions?
Yeah, to stray from our calling.
Right.
What are those loves of the present world
Right.
that we might be clinging to?
Yeah, that's a question worth pondering.
It is.
And then, to balance Damas's departure, we have the steadfast loyalty of Luke,
Yeah.
who remains by Paul's side.
That's right. Offering that companionship and support.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to the power of, genuine commitment and unwavering friendship.
Absolutely.
Like, he could have easily, followed Damas.
Right.
But instead, he chooses to stay,
He stays.
even in the face of, danger and uncertainty.
It's a beautiful example of that kind of deep connection that sustains us through life's trials.
Yeah.
A friendship rooted in shared purpose and unwavering love.
And then there's this intriguing detail about Mark.
Okay.
Remember, he's the one who had left Paul
Yes.
during a previous missionary journey
Mhm.
and caused some friction.
Right. There were some issues there.
And now, Paul specifically requests Timothy to bring Mark with him,
Yes.
stating that he's become useful to the ministry.
Yeah. What a change.
I mean, that is powerful.
it
Like,
is.
that is forgiveness.
It is.
Second chances.
Yeah.
Transformative power of grace.
Yeah. Paul doesn't dwell on those past disappointments.
He sees his growth
He does.
and welcomes him back.
And this raises a crucial question for us.
Right.
How often do we allow past mistakes
Yeah.
to define our perceptions of others?
Yeah.
Do we, like Paul,
Yeah.
offer grace,
Yeah.
create space for growth,
Yeah.
recognizing that people can change
Yeah.
and become valuable contributors?
That's a challenge
Yeah.
to embrace that kind of forgiveness,
It is.
to look beyond past failings
Mhm.
and see that potential for transformation.
Yeah. But, Paul's example encourages us to cultivate that spirit of forgiveness,
Yeah.
to recognize that inherent worth and potential in every individual.
Okay. Now, along with these, kind of deeply personal reflections,
Mhm.
we also find these practical requests.
Right.
We ask for his cloak, his books, especially his parchments.
Yeah.
These are like these mundane details.
Right.
But they add this layer of humanness to this letter.
Yeah.
They remind us that even in the face of death, even while contemplating these profound spiritual truths, we're still embodied beings.
Yeah.
Right.
With basic needs,
Yeah.
earthly attachments.
And I think it also speaks to his continued passion for his work.
Yeah.
Here he is imprisoned, facing his final days,
Mm-hmm.
and he's still thinking about his books,
His writings,
his writings.
the tools of his trade.
Right?
It's a testament to his unwavering dedication
Yeah.
to spreading the gospel.
It is inspiring.
It is.
It suggests that even in the most challenging circumstances, we can still find purpose and meaning
Absolutely.
in pursuing our passions,
Right.
contributing to something larger than ourselves.
Mhm.
It's a reminder that, the pursuit of knowledge,
Yeah.
of spiritual growth,
Doesn't have to end.
doesn't have to end, regardless of our circumstances.
Now, before we move on to the final section of this letter,
Okay.
there's one more crucial detail I think we need to address.
And that is the mention of Alexander the coppersmith.
Right.
This guy apparently caused him considerable harm.
He did.
And he even warns Timothy,
To be cautious.
to be cautious of it.
Right.
So why bring this up?
It's a stark reminder that opposition can emerge from within the community,
Okay.
from those we might least expect.
Right.
And it reinforces this concept of spiritual warfare that we talked about.
Right.
The notion that there are forces at work
Right.
actively seeking to hinder the spread of the gospel.
So it's not just about facing persecution from the outside world.
No.
There might be internal conflicts and challenges.
Exactly.
Right.
And Paul, by naming Alexander specifically,
Yeah.
is equipping Timothy to be discerning,
Right.
to be aware of potential threats,
Okay.
to stand firm in his faith regardless of the source of the opposition.
Sobering thought.
It is.
But, following Christ isn't always easy.
It's not.
And sometimes the greatest challenges
Right.
come from those we thought we could trust.
Yeah, that's true.
But even in the midst of these warnings and these reminders of potential hardship,
Mm-hmm.
Paul's message remains one of hope
It does.
and resilience.
Yes.
He emphasizes that even when we're surrounded by adversaries, God is with us,
Yes.
offering strength,
No particular.
protection, and guidance.
Guidance.
It's a message that echoes through the century,
It does.
reassuring us that we are not alone
That's right.
in our struggles.
That we have a God who's always faithful,
Right.
always present,
Always there.
always ready to equip us to overcome any obstacle.
And so as we transition to the final section of this letter,
Okay.
let's pause for a moment
Right.
and just reflect on what this means.
Okay.
I mean, for you,
Yeah.
we've been talking about loyalty,
Betrayal.
betrayal,
The importance of community.
the reality of opposition.
Right. Both internal and external.
Yeah, these are themes that I think resonate
They do.
deeply
Yeah.
with our own experiences.
They.
I'm curious, like, who are the people that you can rely on?
Mm-hmm.
The ones that will stand by you through thick and thin.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, are there relationships in your life
Right.
that might be hindering your spiritual growth,
Yeah.
that are pulling you away
That's a great question.
from your calling?
Yeah, discerning the company we keep is so vital
It is.
for our spiritual well-being.
Right. We need to nurture those relationships
Yes.
that nourish our faith.
Encourage us to grow
Right.
and challenge us to be our best selves.
And equally important is recognizing, those relationships.
Right.
That might be detrimental to our spiritual journey.
Yes, the ones that drain our energy or
Yeah.
lead us away from our purpose.
Right.
Letting go of such relationships, while difficult, can be essential for our spiritual health and growth.
So as we move into this final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
let's keep those reflections in mind
All right.
as we explore Paul's final greetings
Hmm?
and the powerful benediction that concludes this remarkable letter. Okay, so we're back. And as we wrap up our deep dive into 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 22,
Okay.
we come to these closing verses,
Yeah.
where we see his final greetings
Right. Yeah.
and the blessing that he bestows on Timothy.
Right.
And it's a really poignant moment,
Righteous.
We're kind of privy to this tender exchange
Yeah.
between a mentor and his beloved student.
Right.
And,
Right.
and his words are just so filled with warmth and concern and
Yeah.
this deep longing for connection.
Right.
And he starts out by sending greetings
Right.
to this list of individuals and households.
Yeah.
Prisca, and Aquila,
Mhm.
Onesiphorus' household,
Right.
Erastus,
Trophimus. Pudulus.
Pubens, Linus, Claudia,
Yeah. And all the brethren.
and all the brethren.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
Well, for us, these names might seem kind of random,
Right.
but they represent real people
Right.
who were part of Paul's network of support.
Right.
A ministry.
Right.
And it reminds us that even in his isolation,
Yeah.
he wasn't alone.
He wasn't alone.
And it really emphasizes the importance of community,
Yeah.
right? These bonds that sustain us, on our faith journey.
Yeah, that connect us even across time and distance.
Absolutely. The Christian faith is inherently
Yeah.
communal.
Yeah.
We're called to be part of a body, a family,
Right.
where we can share our burdens and celebrate our
Oh, yeah.
victories,
Yeah.
where we can encourage and challenge one another
Right.
to grow in faith and love.
And then amidst these personal greetings, there's this sense of urgency, as he says, do thy diligence to come before winter.
Yes.
You can almost hear the longing in his voice.
I know, right? Like, come quickly. We're
Yeah.
coming to see you.
Yeah. I mean, it really speaks to the depth of their bond
Yeah.
and the limited time that they have left together.
Right.
And I think it's a reminder to cherish the relationships that we have,
Mm-hmm.
to make the most of the time that we're given.
Absolutely.
Life is precious and often unpredictable.
It is.
And we should never take those we love for granted.
That's right.
And then finally, we come to these closing words of the letter.
Yes.
The benediction that he bestows on Timothy.
The Lord Jesus Christ be with thy spirit. Grace be with you. Amen.
Beautiful.
Ouch.
Powerful ending. It's more than just a farewell.
Right.
It's this affirmation
Yes.
of God's presence
God's grace.
and grace.
Yes.
This spiritual inheritance passed down from mentor to student.
And it speaks to a truth that transcends time and circumstances.
Yeah.
Even in the face of hardship, uncertainty, or even death, we are not alone.
Right.
The Lord is with us, offering strength, guidance, and an abundance of grace to sustain us on our journey.
So we've come to the end of our deep dives into 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 22.
We have.
And we've uncovered, I think, so many layers of meaning.
Yes.
From Paul's, urgent charge to preach the word.
Right.
To his tender reflections on life and legacy and the enduring power of faith.
The power of faith, even in the face of death.
And, as we conclude, I want to leave you with this question that's been echoing in my mind throughout this whole exploration.
Right.
If you were to write a letter with your final words of wisdom, what would you say?
Wow.
What kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind?
That's a profound question.
It challenges us to consider, the values we want to embody, the impact we want to make
on the world. And the kind of mark we want to leave on the hearts of those we love.
And remember, a legacy isn't necessarily about grand gestures or monumental achievements.
Right.
It's often built in those small, everyday moments.
Yes.
The choices we make.
The way we treat others.
The love we share.
The seeds of faith and kindness that we sow.
And so we hope that this deep dive has not only enriched your understanding of 2 Timothy 4, 1 through 22, but also inspired you to consider your own journey of faith and the legacy that you are crafting. Thank you for joining us on this exploration, and we look forward to welcoming you back for another deep dive, where we'll continue to uncover these hidden gems and discover this timeless wisdom in the texts that have shaped our world.